The conference room at Henderson and Associates felt cold despite the Arizona heat outside. I sat at the far end of the polished table, watching my family arrange themselves like they were preparing for a coronation rather than an estate planning meeting. My brother Derek took the seat at the head of the table, Grandpa's chair, without asking. Mom and Dad flanked him like loyal advisors. My sister Lauren scrolled through her phone, occasionally glancing up to smirk at me. I was 32 years old and I'd spent the last decade being invisible to them. The overlooked daughter. The one who chose software engineering over law school. The one who worked remotely instead of joining the family business. The disappointment. Derek leaned back in the chair, his expensive suit catching the light. He'd always dressed like he was worth more than he actually was. Now that we're all here, let's get started. Mom, Dad, and I have been discussing Grandpa's properties extensively. I stayed quiet, my hands folded on the table. I'd learned years ago that silence made people reveal more than questions ever could. As the eldest son and the one who's been actively involved in managing these properties, Derek continued, gesturing broadly, it makes sense that I take ownership of the portfolio. All 12 rental properties in the Phoenix and Scottsdale areas. Lauren looked up from her phone. What about me? You'll get the beach condo in San Diego, Mom interjected quickly. It's worth nearly as much. It wasn't, but I didn't correct her. Derek's eyes finally landed on me. Maya, you've never shown interest in real estate or family business matters. You've been focused on your tech career in Seattle. So this arrangement doesn't really affect you. I see, I said simply. Dad shifted uncomfortably. He'd always been better at avoiding conflict than addressing it. Honey, you understand, don't you? Derek has been collecting rents, handling maintenance issues, dealing with tenants for 7 years now. He's earned this. 7 years. I filed that number away. The properties generate substantial income, Derek said, pulling out a folder. Combined monthly rental income of approximately $42,000. Annual gross of just over $500,000. With proper management, my management, we're looking at serious wealth building here. Everyone nodded appreciatively. I noticed he said, we, but had clearly stated everything was going to him. What about Grandpa's wishes? I asked quietly. The room fell silent for a moment. Derek's jaw tightened. Grandpa was 93 when he passed. His wishes were that the family stay close and that his legacy be preserved. I'm honoring that by keeping everything together under single ownership. Mine. Did he say that specifically? I pressed gently. Maya, don't be difficult, Mom snapped. Your grandfather trusted Derek with these properties. He put him in charge of managing them. That shows clear intent. I nodded slowly. When did Grandpa put Derek in charge? 7 years ago, Derek said quickly. Right after Grandma passed. He knew he couldn't handle everything alone, so he asked me to step up. And I did. Every single month for 7 years. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, scrolling to a specific section. So you've been managing these properties since 2018? Yes, Derek said impatiently. Why does this matter? Just clarifying the timeline, I said. And in those 7 years, you've collected rent, handled repairs, dealt with tenant issues? Every bit of it, Derek said proudly. Do you know how many 2 a.m. calls I've taken about broken water heaters? How many tenant disputes I've mediated? This hasn't been easy. I'm sure it hasn't, I agreed. And Grandpa appreciated your help? Of course he did, Mom said. Derek, show her the documentation. Maybe that will help her understand. Derek slid a stack of papers across the table. Property management agreements, maintenance records, tenant communications. All with his name on them. All dated from 2018 onward. I glanced through them briefly, then set them aside. These show you manage the properties. They don't show ownership transfer. We're handling that today, Dad said. That's why we called this meeting. The estate attorney is drawing up the paperwork to officially transfer everything to Derek's name. Clean and simple. Actually, a voice said from the doorway, that's not possible. Everyone turned. Robert Chen, Grandpa's estate attorney, stood in the entrance. He was in his 60s with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every family drama imaginable. Robert, Mom said, standing. Perfect timing. We're ready to proceed with the transfer documents. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Robert said, walking to the table and setting down his briefcase. I've been trying to reach you all for the past week, but my calls weren't returned. We've been busy, Derek said dismissively. But we're here now. Let's get this done. Robert looked at me and I saw something in his eyes. Recognition. Respect. Ms. Martinez, I'm glad you're here. Happy to be included, I said simply. Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out several folders. I need to clarify something important about your grandfather's estate. Specifically about the 12 rental properties in question. Yes, Derek said impatiently. We know they're the main asset. That's why I'm here, to finalize my ownership. Mr. Martinez, Robert said carefully, you cannot own what has already been transferred to someone else. The room went silent. Derek's confident smile faltered. What are you talking about? In March of 2019, your grandfather executed a series of quit-claim deeds transferring all 12 rental properties to his granddaughter, Maya Martinez. The deeds were recorded with Maricopa County that same month. They are irrevocable and legally binding. I watched Derek's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and then anger in rapid succession. That's impossible. I've been managing those properties. My name is on everything. Your name is on management agreements, Robert corrected. Not ownership documents. You were hired, paid in fact, to manage properties owned by Ms. Martinez. Hired. Derek's voice rose. I was family helping family. You were compensated, Robert said calmly, pulling out another folder. Management fees of $3,000 per month, paid from the rental income. 7 years at $36,000 annually equals $252,000 in compensation. Mom stood abruptly. Maya, what is he talking about? I finally allowed myself a small smile. I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder, one I'd been carrying for weeks in anticipation of this meeting. I slid it across the table to the center where everyone could see. In January of 2019, Grandpa called me, I began quietly. He asked me to fly down from Seattle. Said he needed to talk to me about something important. So I took a week off work and came down. I don't remember that, Lauren said suspiciously. You wouldn't. I stayed at Grandpa's house. We didn't broadcast it to the family. I opened the folder, revealing the first document, a quit-claim deed with Grandpa's signature and the county recorder's stamp. Grandpa told me he'd been watching all of you for years. Watching how you treated family wealth like it was owed to you. Watching how you talked about his properties like they were already yours while he was still alive. That's not true, Mom protested. He showed me emails. I continued, my voice steady. Texts from Derek about how when the old man finally kicks it will be set. Messages from Lauren about which properties she wanted to renovate once they were hers. Conversations where you all discussed his estate like he was already gone. Dad's face had gone pale. He looked down at the table. But what really made his decision final, I said, was discovering that someone had been stealing from him. Derek shot to his feet. I never stole anything. Sit down, Mr. Martinez, Robert said firmly. And yes, you did. I pulled out the next section of documents. Bank statements. Rental ledgers. Comparison spreadsheets. Grandpa's properties generated $42,000 in monthly rent, like you said, Derek. That's $504,000 annually. Over 7 years, that's $3.5 million in gross rental income. Minus expenses, Derek said quickly. Yes, minus expenses, I agreed. Property taxes, maintenance, insurance, management fees. All legitimate. Grandpa's accountant provided detailed records of approved expenses. I slid another document forward. This shows what should have been net income after all legitimate expenses. $2.8 million over 7 years. So, Lauren demanded. So Derek reported, and provided to Grandpa, net income of only $2.2 million. I looked directly at my brother. $600,000 is missing. The room exploded. Mom started shouting. Lauren jumped to Derek's feet. Dad sat frozen, staring at the numbers. Robert held up his hand. Please. Let me explain the legal situation. Everyone quieted, though Derek remained standing, his hands clenched into fists. In February of 2019, Mr. Martinez, your grandfather, hired a forensic accountant to review 7 years of rental income and expenses. The accountant identified multiple discrepancies. Inflated maintenance costs with no corresponding work orders. Phantom contractor payments. Rental income collected but not fully deposited. Over time, approximately $600,000 was diverted from the estate. "This is insane," Derek said, but his voice had lost its conviction. The accountant's report was conclusive enough that Mr. Martinez made several decisions, Robert continued. First, he decided to transfer all properties to his granddaughter Maya, whom he trusted implicitly. Second, he decided to keep Derek on as property manager, paid, supervised, but not as family doing a favor. He wanted to see if Derek would correct his behavior with oversight. Did he? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Robert shook his head. The diversion continued, though at a smaller scale. Another $80,000 over the next 6 years before your grandfather passed. I did the math quickly. So Derek stole nearly $700,000 total. Allegedly stole, Derek said quickly. You can't prove any of this. I pulled out my phone and opened an email. Surely I can. Grandpa forwarded me everything. Every suspicious transaction. Every inflated invoice. Every missing deposit. He documented it all because he knew this day would come. I looked at Derek with something close to pity. He gave you 6 years to come clean. To apologize. To make it right. You never did. Mom's voice was small. Maya, why didn't you say something? Because Grandpa asked me not to, I said. He wanted to see if Derek would confess on his own. If any of you would notice something was wrong and investigate. But no one did. You were all too busy planning how to divide everything up once he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert cleared his throat. Ms. Martinez, as the legal owner of these properties, you have several options. You can continue with the current management arrangement, terminate it, or pursue legal action for the diverted funds. I looked at Derek, really looked at him. My older brother who'd spent his whole life believing the world owed him something because he was born first. Who'd taken advantage of our grandfather's trust and pocketed hundreds of thousands of dollars he had no right to. I'm terminating the management agreement effective immediately, I said. As of today, Derek has no authority over any of the properties. You can't do this, Derek said desperately. I've built relationships with those tenants. I know those properties inside and out. You stole from our grandfather for 13 years, I said flatly. I absolutely can do this. What about the money? Lauren asked. Is Derek going to jail? I considered this. That depends entirely on Derek. My brother's eyes met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw him look genuinely afraid. The full amount diverted was $680,000, I said. You've been paid $252,000 in management fees over the years. I'm willing to deduct that from what you owe, since some of the work you did was legitimate. That leaves $428,000. I don't have that kind of money, Derek whispered. Then you'll make payments, I said simply. I want a formal repayment agreement. $10,000 per month until the debt is cleared. Miss a single payment, and I file criminal charges with the evidence Grandpa compiled. Robert pulled out yet another document. I took the liberty of drafting such an agreement, anticipating this conversation. Derek sank back into his chair, all the fight draining out of him. This will take me years. It took you 13 years to steal it, I pointed out. You'll spend 4 years paying it back. Seems fair to me. Mom looked between us, her face a mixture of shock and something that might have been shame. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. Grandpa tried to talk to you about his concerns. You dismissed them as old age. You were so focused on Derek being the golden child that you never questioned whether he deserved that position. Dad finally spoke, his voice hoarse. What happens to the family now? I gathered my documents carefully, placing them back in my folder. That depends on all of you. I'm not interested in revenge or in rubbing this in anyone's face. But I'm also not interested in pretending the last decade didn't happen. I stood and Robert stood with me. The properties will continue generating income. I'll be hiring a professional property management company, one with proper bonding and oversight. The tenants won't notice any change except possibly better service. And the family? Lauren asked quietly. I'll be at Thanksgiving if anyone wants to actually get to know me instead of dismissing me, I said. But I'm done being invisible. I'm done being the disappointment. And I'm done watching people mistake kindness for weakness. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Derek? The properties are worth about $8.2 million now. Grandpa bought them for a total of $2.3 million over 30 years ago. He was a brilliant investor. You were just a property manager who got greedy. Try to remember the difference. Robert and I left the conference room together. Behind us, I could hear the family erupting into arguments, accusations flying, voices raised, the careful facade finally cracking. In the elevator, Robert looked at me with something like approval. Your grandfather would be proud of how you handled that. Would he? I asked. Part of me wishes I'd just told them all years ago. Maybe things would be different. Or maybe they'd be worse, Robert said wisely. You gave your brother every chance to do the right thing. He chose not to. That's on him, not you. We exited into the lobby. The Arizona sun streamed through the tall windows, warm and bright. I pulled out my phone and opened my text messages. There was one from Marcus, my partner of 5 years, who was waiting in Seattle. How'd it go? He'd asked an hour earlier. I typed quickly, about as expected. Flying home tonight. Love you. His response came immediately. Proud of you. Making your favorite dinner. See you soon. I smiled. Marcus had known about all of this from the beginning. He'd been the one I called crying after Grandpa first showed me the evidence of Derek's theft. He'd helped me organize documents and research legal options. He'd reminded me that protecting myself didn't make me cruel. It made me smart. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, then decided to answer. Why, It was Dad's voice, small and uncertain. Can we talk? We just did, I pointed out. I mean really talk. Not in a room full of lawyers and anger. Just talk. I considered this. My father had spent 32 years going along with whatever Mom wanted, whatever made things easiest. But there'd been moments, rare, brief moments, when I'd seen something else in him. Regret maybe. Or recognition that the family had taken a wrong turn somewhere. I'm flying back to Seattle tonight, I said. But I'll be back for Thanksgiving. If you want to talk, then really talk, I'm willing. Thank you, he said quietly. Maya, I'm sorry. For not seeing. For not protecting you from my own family? I finished. Yeah. We'll talk about that too. I ended the call and looked at Robert. Do you think any of them will actually change? I think people rarely change unless they have to, Robert said honestly. You've given them a reason to have to. What they do with that is up to them. And if they don't? Then you have 12 successful rental properties, a thriving career, and apparently a partner making your favorite dinner tonight. You'll be fine regardless. He was right. I would be fine. Better than fine, actually. As I drove to the airport, my mind drifted back to that week in January 2019. Sitting with Grandpa in his study, going over documents and talking about family, trust, and legacy. Why me? I'd asked him. Why not someone else? Why not just sell everything? Grandpa had looked at me with those sharp eyes that age never dimmed. Because you're the only one who never asked me for anything, Maya. You're the only one who called just to talk, not to hint about needing money. You're the only one who treated me like a person instead of an inheritance waiting to happen. That's a low bar, I'd said. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it, he'd replied. Besides, you're smart. Careful. You won't squander this. You'll build on it. That's what I want my legacy to be, not gold digging and greed, but someone smart enough to turn what I built into something even better. I'd cried then, overwhelmed by his trust and saddened by his disappointment in the rest of the family. But I'd also made him a promise. I would protect what he'd built and I would use it wisely. 3 weeks later, I'd flown back to Seattle with quitclaim deeds in my bag and a new understanding of what family really meant. Or rather, what it didn't mean. True family doesn't steal from you and call it management fees. True family doesn't dismiss your accomplishments and call it honesty. True family doesn't plot your inheritance before you're dead. The real family I'd built, Marcus, my friends in Seattle, my mentor at work, even Robert Chin, they'd shown me what loyalty and respect actually looked like. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lauren. Derek is freaking out. Mom's crying. Dad's locked himself in his car. This is all your fault. I almost laughed. Of course it was my fault for pointing out theft. Not Derek's fault for stealing. Not their fault for enabling him. I typed back. Derek had 13 years to make this right. He chose not to. The consequences are on him. Her response came quickly. You've destroyed this family. No, I wrote. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. I blocked her number and kept driving. At the airport, sitting at my gate, I pulled up the property management company's website. Tomorrow I'd call them about taking over the portfolio. I'd also call the forensic accountant Robert had recommended to do a complete current audit. And I'd review every tenant file to make sure Derek hadn't created any problems I'd need to address. It would be work. Real work. But it would be honest work, and the properties would finally be managed with integrity. My phone buzzed one more time. Robert. The repayment agreement has been signed. Derek wasn't happy, but he signed. Monthly payments start next week. I'll monitor compliance and alert you to any issues. Thank you, I replied. For everything. Grandpa was lucky to have you. The feeling was mutual, Robert wrote back. And Maya? He was right about you. You're going to do great things with this legacy. As my flight boarded, I thought about Grandpa's last words to me, spoken just 2 weeks before he passed. I'd flown down when I heard he was declining, spent 3 days at his bedside. They're going to be angry, he told me, his voice weak but clear. When they find out you own everything. They're going to say I wasn't in my right mind. That you manipulated me. I know, I'd said, holding his hand. But you and I both know the truth, he'd continued. I was perfectly sound when I made these decisions. And I made them because you earned this, Maya. Not by being born first or being the loudest or making the most demands. You earned it by being decent. By being honest. By calling your old grandfather every week just to ask how he was doing. I called because I wanted to, I'd said, tears in my eyes. I know you did. That's exactly my point. He'd squeezed my hand with what little strength he had left. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting what's yours. Don't let them manipulate you into giving up what you've earned. Promise me. I promise. Good girl. Now go live your life. Build something wonderful. And know that I'm proud of you. He'd passed 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. The plane took off, Phoenix falling away beneath me. I looked out the window at the sprawling desert city, at the neighborhoods where 12 rental properties sat. Properties that were now mine to protect, mine to grow, mine to eventually pass on to someone I trusted. Derek's text came through just as we reached cruising altitude. This isn't over. I didn't respond. Because it was over. The years of being dismissed, overlooked, and underestimated were done. The years of watching my family treat kindness as weakness were finished. I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the overlooked daughter. I wasn't the failure who chose tech over law or Seattle over Arizona. I was the granddaughter who'd earned her grandfather's trust. The one he'd chosen to carry on his legacy. The one who'd proven that character matters more than birth order. And I was the one flying home to a partner who loved me, a career I'd built myself, and a real estate portfolio worth over $8 million. As for my family, they could either learn from this and rebuild relationships based on respect instead of assumptions, or they could continue being angry at me for refusing to be invisible. Either way, I'd be fine. Better than fine, actually. I closed my eyes and let myself enjoy the certainty of it. The golden child had fallen, the scapegoat had risen, and justice, though delayed by years of patience, had finally, thoroughly been served. The properties were mine. The truth was out. And my grandfather's legacy was safe in hands that would honor it. That was all that mattered.